So here is my next project. I am going to build my own solar panel, and starting out with these individual solar cells. They're extremely thin. It's hard to even describe how thin they are. Maybe that captures it. Very thin, very fragile. And I ordered 40. They sent me 43. I'm going to end up using 36 in this panel. And I've started building my aluminum frame. So here it is right now. I've actually gotten pretty far into it, although it's been simple so far. But I wanted to shoot this video before I before I had it mostly completed. It's nothing but aluminum angle iron, and actually made these clips and corner brackets out of extra pieces of the angle iron instead of buying it. And I'm just going to screw it together, and I also have a piece of glass right there that was cut the size I wanted to. And my goal here is to, this is a prototype that I have made some changes to plans that I got off the internet, and my goal is to try to make this thing as cheaply as possible, and we'll see how that goes. One of these videos will be a tally of the total final costs and at the end. So catch another video here in a little bit. So here is the frame of my solar panel, pretty well put together right now. You can see my angle iron, or my angles pieces bolted in. This glass is laid in here temporarily. It is non-tempered glass. I did that to save some money. I don't know if that will be very durable in the long run, but again, this is just an experiment in a prototype. I also have bolted in this terminal block. You'll kind of see what that's for later on. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to kind of take this back apart, lay a bead of silicone all around, and relay the glass back in here and bolt it all back together. And as I'm doing that, I'm going to turn these bolts around so that they protrude inside the frame. And here you will, as you see, I'll only have this protruding out, places where I have the bolts. So that's what I'm going to work on right now. Here I'm showing the process for tabbing a solar cell. Right now I'm putting flux along each of the lines, and see how I'm getting that on there. It's really pretty easy with the pin that they send with the kit, and somewhat of a tedious process getting the tabbing wire set down on there. Make sure the iron is nice and hot. And one thing I learned pretty quickly was that your iron will actually oxidize, and you think that you're doing something wrong, but the best thing to do is to clean it with a file every so often. Get all the, it's pretty obvious what, where the oxidation is. It just turns black, and if you just file that off, I've got a real fine file, and I can even do it while it's hot. Some people say you should let it cool. I didn't do that. Worked fine for me. Just did it while it's hot, and you will eventually wear down, your iron, your tip. But they're, the one I bought, the iron I bought, came with another one. You can buy the tips for nothing. Just one screw takes them out, put them back in. So do it that way, and the soldering goes much easier. Alright, so I've been doing a little bit of welding, or soldering, I'm sorry, here on these solar cells, just to show you a little bit how that goes. You get these, what they call tabbing wire, and it looks like that. Cut about 6 inches, a little bit more, and it's it already has solder kind of as part of it. And then this is what a blank cell looks like again, and you solder that strip of tabbing wire on each of those lines on the front side, and then you've got extra, and I'll show you what that does here in a minute. The front side, this would be the side that faces the sun, the side you're looking at now, is the negative side. So the way you'll end up stringing these all together, because we're going to put these together in series, because they're only half of a volt. We need to get this thing up to about 18 volts. It's like this. So now the back side is the negative side. So when we put these together in series, we'll do them like this. So this one runs underneath and then over the top to the positive side, and then the positive side, or the negative side coming from this one, goes up over the top of the next cell. See how these will lay over the top, and so on. We'll just keep going along in a line until we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So these obviously will be spaced together real close and tight, make it look nice. And then we'll be negative. It'll go like this: underneath, negative, over the top, positive, underneath, negative, over the top, positive, and so on, to make this one single row. And then once I have another row, I have the ends will be tabbed together, and it'll basically snake along in 4 rows of 9. So show that as we go along. So this is just a time lapse that I took of me soldering several cells together. Just a little dab of solder on each of those points. There's like 3 points on the back, the positive side. Solder them all together in a row, and then you get a row of 9. And when you're done with that, this it looks like this. There's a row of 9 together, and then you get 4 rows of 9, and you lay them out on your glass, and this is what that looks like. All right, so this is a video of the finished product, but I'm going to run through this real quick because I forgot to talk about this. Anyway, as I mentioned before, each one of these cells is half a volt. If you have 36 cells, that gives you 18 volts when they're wired in a series, and 18 volts basically, when you account for voltage loss through a charge controller, is basically the right voltage you would want for a 12 volt charging 12 volt. And so, you know, if you could line up 36 cells in one straight row, and that made any sense to do it that way, that's what you would do, just straight 36. But that doesn't really work out very well for, you know, one long panel of 36, and then you end up having your positive and your negative that distance away. So what you do is you go, you line them up this way, and you turn the corner, and it ends up being a snake like this, and so on. And so you have your negative lead coming out from underneath, and then this one is positive on top, negative on bottom. These two are bus barred together, and so on. And then these two are bus barred together with the positive to the negative, and so on this way. And then that's bus barred together with positive and negative all the way down here. And then you have a positive lead here, so you end up with a positive lead and the positive lead. And here you can see I've got my black wire going in to there, and my red wire going into there. One more thing real quick, on the positive side, this is called the blocking diode. That's there and oriented in the proper way with the gray stripe on this going this way, and that keeps backfeeding any electricity if you're connected to a battery. If you were to be connected to a battery without a charge controller, it keeps electricity from backfeeding into the panels, which is not good. And then also you can see in this video my encapsulant. It's really shiny, and what that is a 2-part silicone. Comes in a 16-ounce bottle, and then a separate smaller big bottle, 10-to-1 ratio for the hardener. Mix it in there, pour it all in there. It takes about a week to fully cure, but it works its way underneath the solar cells and on top of them, and that encapsulates them and keeps the water and weather and also oxygen away from the cells. So that's the point of doing all that.
Here you can see the cell, or the panel. I've got a bunch of weights on the corners, and that I held the corners down as I was putting silicone to hold them down. This is a picture of what it looks like when it's all finished on the back side, and then also on the front side, all finished.
Here is my completed solar panel. It's all together, and I had a good sunny day. Finally, it's noon on November the 10th, and I've got it right now, the solar panel hooked up to my meter, multimeter, and you can see it's producing, or putting out 21 volts, which is that's good. That's higher than where it's supposed to be. So I'm gonna switch this around and check out how many amps I'm getting. Okay, I switched my multimeter around, and you can see I'm getting 3.52 amps, which is really awesome. Super happy with that. So I think what I'm going to do is I have a 100-watt panel that I bought, and I'm going to see how that does. Anyway, I'm going to do the math here real quick too. Switched out my multimeter, and I think I did something to that other one when I was switching from amps to volts. But anyway, I did the math, and at about 3.5 amps and about a little over 20 volts, that's just shy of 72 watts. And so I mean, it's really best sun conditions and everything else, but it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, because it's supposed to be a 65-watt panel. And so like I said, it's producing exactly where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to switch out. I got this, like I said, 100-watt panel that I bought for only like $93. That's delivered, so that's pretty cheap. And I'm going to hook that one up and see what it's getting. So here is my 100-watt panel that I bought. Got it hooked up. Got it on the multimeter measuring volts right now at 22.1. Switch that over and measure, or do a check on the amps. Alright, got this switched over, and it's showing about right around 5, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, 5 amps, and at 22 volts times about 5 amps, you get 110 watts out of a 100-watt rated panel. So in these really good conditions, it's cool out, good solid sunshine, seems like my panel is producing in the same proportion as this one is. So again, that makes me really happy. I can't say that my panel looks as nice as this one, but it was my first one, so hopefully maybe I'll get better if I choose to do some more. Fun that I would check out what I'm going to get out of this panel on an overcast day. Today is Sunday, November the 12th, and it's 12:30 in the afternoon, and it's like a perfectly overcast day. I can't see any blue sky at all. I got this hooked up to my multimeter, testing the voltage at this point, and you can see the voltage on an overcast day is 19.4, 19.5, so that's still really good on voltage. And let's see what we get. Switch it over to
amps. Okay. I believe what that's telling me is 0.35 amps, which is not very much. I'm going to check that with my other multimeter because this one is a little bit confusing. But yeah, I believe that's reading 0.35. Compare that to basically 3.5. So 10 times as many amps on a good sunny day.
Here's a quick video on what this whole thing cost me. Not in any particular order, just to kind of have them listed in the order that I found my receipts in and so forth. This is a terminal block, $3.69. Clear silicone, 1 tube, $2.98. Spade terminals. Those are the yellow terminals to connect the wires in. I figured 60 cents because I bought a whole bunch of them. I figured out how many I used. 12 gauge wire, same thing there. Bought a whole bunch of it and figured the amount of wire I spent used on this cost about $2. The lock nuts, 70 cents. Stainless steel screws, $4.13. Anglo aluminum, $21.48. Glass, not tempered, $20. That would have been, I think, another $20 or more to get the same glass tempered. My solar cells, the tabbing wire, the bus wire, and the blocking diode all came together in a kit. It also came with some flux. That was $39. And then, actually, I think it came with some solder too. And then the encapsulant was $33. So the total is $128.15 for a 65 watt panel. That's my total cost. The last thing I want to cover in this video is just address the question as to whether or not it was all worth it. So on the financial side of it, you can see it kind of rounded a little bit, but $128 for my panel. It's rated at 65 watts. That's $1.97 per watt. It's kind of the standard way of measuring where solar stands in the marketplace. So the panel I was able to purchase at $93, which I have to admit was a really good deal. For 100 watts is 93 cents per watt. So you know, one thing I would point out about this number over here, I think as I mentioned before, that number does not include some additional amount if I had used tempered glass, and obviously does not include my labor. But it would be hard for me to imagine that, you know, no matter what, even if you didn't think about the labor at all, that was no concern, you just wanted to do it for fun and maybe get yourself some cheap power, that really hard to think that you could ever come close to $1 a watt, even get close to that. And so, as long as the prices for, store purchased or, online purchased solar is that cheap, which I'm very happy that it is that cheap, it really doesn't make a whole lot of financial sense. But would I do it again? The answer is yes, I probably will do it again. In fact, I've ordered another set of the solar cells, and I just want to maybe see if I can make it how much faster I can do it. If I decide to make some changes in the way that it's done to improve the quality, and since I have the cells, I'm not going to let them go to waste. So I'm going to make another one. As far as the experience, I learned a heck of a lot more about how solar panels are made and put together and what it all means than I ever would just reading about it, or watching videos even. So yeah, I enjoyed it.